Recording in progress.
Great, thank you, Chris. Okay, folks, I'm going to go ahead and call us to order for the this meeting of the Dunn County Executive Committee. Call of the roll, as usual, is to start. Ann's online. Is Jim's online, or do we not have him? Okay, so one absence. Or he'll roll in at in 3 minutes, which he's very good at. On to the approval of the minutes. I would need a motion. Supervisor Steen moves, Supervisor Morehouse seconds. Any discussion to the minutes? Nope. Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes as presented? And the computer approves too. Any opposed? Hearing none, minutes are approved. Public comments. This is the point at which anyone from the public may come up and address us for up to 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment? And go ahead and please state your name and record for the name and address for the record. Oof.
Okay. Try this again.
There you go.
All right. Hi, I'm Kelly Hayes from Wheeler, Wisconsin. In January, I was here and I asked you to take up the refugee resettlement issue. And on March 5th, I emailed a request asking that the refugee resettlement resolution be put on the agenda for consideration and action. I have not personally received a response from Chairman McCullough regarding these requests. However, through communication with County Manager Corpola, I received your response and wish to address some of the points. As a nonpartisan governmental body, it is wholly relevant to address all actions by state or federal government. Our Constitution does not reserve the powers of refugee resettlement for the federal government. Our Constitution limits the powers reserved for the federal government, the main power being one of defense. It does recognize the power granted by God of the people, who in turn have given the power to govern to our elected officials. We, the people, always have the right to interpose for our well-being. This resolution does not ask for debate on the Resettlement Act, but addresses the glaring fact that an NGO with non-governmental authority or recourse by the people has bypassed the law. It simply states that before refugees be placed in Dunn County, the law be followed so that impact assessments can be made. This is not a refugee issue, but a law issue. Of what benefit can Dunn County be to refugees if we do not have the structure and services in place to assist them, like interpreters, housing, healthcare, education? At a nearly $40 million deficit and a school board which recently sought a referendum granting $4 million per year, how would we support a refugee community? Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
My name is Cecilia Cooper. I live in Menominee, Wisconsin, and I'd like to follow up to Kelly's remarks. Oh, I'm sorry.
We've all been there.
Sorry, very sorry.
It's all right.
I'd like to point out to you that last night, St. Croix County passed 3 resolutions in regard to the refugee resettlement issue. The first resolution voted on was in support of Senate Bill 916, which seeks to improve how local governments are notified about plans to resettle refugees. They voted in favor of this, which I think is a reasonable request for counties to make, as you are here to represent us, the taxpayers and citizens of this county. The second resolution was in support of the CARE Act proposed by Congressman Tom Tiffany and Derek Van Orden. The act would empower state and local governments to reject federal refugee resettlements based on their ability or the lack of their ability to support said refugees. The third resolution voted on requested an immediate pause on refugee resettlement in St. Croix County. I would urge you to do the same. As I said, you are elected by us to represent us, and I believe you should do your due diligence to determine how this would impact our schools, our healthcare services, our taxes, and other unforeseen consequences of moving a population in that, for one thing, does not speak English. I'd also like to point out that I recently checked into some homelessness in Dunn County itself. There was an article from the director of Stepping Stones. It was in 2023. He was interviewed when they were opening the Stepping Stones facility that is currently full and has a waiting list. He pointed out that in 2023, Dunn County experienced 11,000 shelter nights. They pointed out that most of these residents, over 58% of them, or about 58% of them, were people whose prior residence was the city of Menominee, who were seeking shelter because they were now homeless. The overflow, the remainder, came from Chippewa County, Barron, and Eau Claire. I urge you to consider those facts, that we have homeless in our area already who are in need of help, and that we should take care of our own citizens first. That's not an unreasonable request. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up.
I'd like to thank the county. Every time I drive down Q, I think you guys knocked it out of the park when you redid Q. That is such a horrific piece of road to drive now. And you get warm fuzzies every time I drive down that road. And that's an excellent example of good governance. You saw a problem and you took care of it, and the county is better for it. Putting a pause on whether we have refugees come in or not is also good governance. It doesn't hurt anything to stop, take a look, and see how this is going to impact negatively or positively the people of the county. Redoing Q is a big plus. So let's do that, show more good governance. Vote to have a pause. Let's take a look and see how this is going to impact us before we just let them make the decision for us and start putting people here. Thank you. Mike Cooper, by the way.
Any more? All right, that closes public comments. On to the county manager's report. Chris?
All right, good afternoon. First item is the draft county board agenda. You will hear department reports from the sheriff's department, medical examiner, and emergency management and communication. Andrew is going to take a brief time out of the county manager time to talk about the new redistricting maps. It's a little hard sometimes to sort that out online. And so he'll kind of give a tutorial on that, and the upcoming election. And I want to talk with the board a little bit about the new member board orientation that we've been planning, and then an update on ERP, our finance system.
Just
And then
a
the
quick
rest-
note, Jim has now joined us.
I
so-
see that. And then the rest of the things are pretty routine. 2023 carry forwards and budget adjustments, which you're going to take action on today. A health department budget adjustment and a resolution for work zone awareness week. So I hate to say that it might go quickly, but it might go quickly. Any questions or comments about the agenda? All right, then I just also wanted to just take a moment to provide you with an update about our ERP. So again, ERP stands for Enterprise Resources and Planning. And it's really a fancy name. I mean, it can include a lot of different things, but it's really, in our case, a fancy name for our financial system. And so, as you are well aware, we've had SAP since 2016. It has some sunsetting that's going to come with its current functionality. Debate as, or not debate, but there's differing information about when that actual sunset will occur. But we knew that we needed to start to do some planning to either continue our relationship with SAP and the vendor who kind of manages that for us, Phoenix, or whether we needed to take on a different system. So we have fully implemented a planning process and have KT Gallagher as our project manager, Tiffany Taggart, who's one of her in her administrative support, who also has some project management experience at UW Stout. So she's able to lend a lot of support to KT. We have a mostly anyway, fully staffed group of, we have a steering committee, we have what we call pit crews, and each of those pit crews have a lead, and there are 7 of them. So I think we have all told more than 50 people, probably closer to 70 people. I don't know. Anyway, more than 50 county staff that are involved in the planning process. I'm just going to keep updating you about that because while I think that we're doing our due diligence to have a better implementation than we did in 2016, it will not be flawless and we will hit some bumps along the road. But we are working really hard to do it right. So questions about that?
I think all of us will be just a lot happier if it works better than SAP does.
And I think that's all that I have.
Oh, this may be a relatively short meeting. We'll see.
Excuse me.
Dan's got a question.
I was wondering, on the draft agenda for the county board, is our next meeting actually April 9th? Is it the week after election in April
No.
or?
It's actually this, but it's not the 17th. I think it's the 16th.
So
But it's Tuesday. Is it the 16th? Is that the date?
That's a weird thing on the calendar.
Yes, on your original calendar, I had it wrong. It is the Tuesday, so the election's on the 2nd and the reorganization meeting will be on Tuesday, the 16th.
does that answer your question, Ann, or do you need more?
So it says April 17th on the draft agenda. So
Yes,
that,
I just made note of that. Yes, thank you.
okay. All right, just wondering. Thanks.
Thanks, Ann, and I'm sorry I didn't see your hand up. There's a you're kind of blocked at the moment on the monitor. Anything else from anybody for Chris for the county manager's report? Okay. On to item 6, reports, resolutions, and ordinances to the county board from the executive committee. That first one, discussion about pros and cons of possible sale of county-owned properties. This has come up because Supervisor Bauer was suggesting that one way the county might choose to raise some money for particularly the expansion of the highway shop would be to sell a couple of islands we own. And you know, Supervisor Bauer wanted to bring this forward, and I said, well, if we're going to have that discussion, we might as well have a broader discussion about because we don't really have a set policy for sale of things, and there's some debate about which committee would be appropriate for which item. I know people have expressed some interest in the transfer station. Occasionally, people have brought up the idea of selling the rec park and buying some much cheaper land further out of town to put the fair on. But this is just a general discussion item, so I don't know that I will, unless we get to blows. I think I'm just going to say, you know, have at if you have any opinions on the topic. Tom, do you want to start with some of the land case for the islands and how that might be PR&D and
Yeah, I mean, the question about whether or not the management of the Dunn County Islands, which is basically that island has been allocated, as I understand it, by ordinance to the Planning, Resource and Development Committee. That's the only parcel that I think our committee has authority over. Otherwise, it's the Facilities Committee, I believe. And so we have managed that for recreational use, for natural, for timber harvest. And I think our view broadly has been that it is property that is difficult to access. It's not likely to be usable for development, but it does have a natural value as a natural area. It has a value as a natural buffer for a river system that often floods. And that it would be not our, I think if we were asked to consider it, we would consider it, but we would not bring it to the board for consideration at this point in time. But we haven't talked about it, so.
Yeah, we had just had the very first step of this discussion, talking about the islands a little bit, noting that they've been in conservancy, natural value. But if we're going to have that discussion, I thought that the executive committee should have a chance to weigh in before we think about selling things more broadly. Randy, you look like you have a couple of thoughts.
Highway, sold that land in Colfax a few years ago.
Yep.
I mean, that was under highway. It was an old gravel pit. And obviously we sold it to Wisconsin Land Trust, so it stayed in conservancy or community owned, basically. So I guess it all depends on the department and what we need. I've always been for the sale of the recycling center because I don't think there's a use for it. And I think it could be very well easily sold, but I think it depends on the property, but definitely the recycling center, I think, should be sold. Instead of letting it just deteriorate until it was said it wasn't worth anything before. So that's
Yeah,
where I'm on that. So.
Okay, yeah, I think one of the issues with the recycling center is we have not done the environmental testing, and so it would have some of the same issues for sale that the gravel pit had. We might, if we were selling it to another governmental entity, or the right sort of nonprofit, it would be fairly easy. I think there are some further steps that we would need to do. And I'm not averse.
Yeah.
Supervisor Steen.
Yes, as we go forward with this, Tom, could you, or do you have the figures on how much money we've generated from the timber sale? We don't need it today, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, we can get it for you.
Going forward, and then also I would like to know if it's, is it time to harvest some more?
Yeah, we are planning, I think, for this summer or fall for another harvest on there.
Okay, and then this isn't specific to this or the waste site, but traditionally over the years, counties and municipalities have not been in the land acquisition business. But as we are moving into different centuries and different problems with employment and affordable housing, I think, and I don't know if there's ever going to be a change from the legislature regarding TIF districts for counties, but I know for TIF districts for municipalities, villages and cities, that's a tool that allows them to help development. And so I would just ask that we consider that as we move forward. I know it's not a traditional thing, but you kind of got to change with the times. And I would just like the county to take a look at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Supervisor Dean. Supervisor Vogel, you're probably the person whose committee would be most directly responsible for most of those sales if we were doing them. So if you have anything you wanted to add.
Well, so we discussed a little bit about the transfer station because someone has made a proposal to purchase it for storage, I believe. And we're wondering, we wanted to hear what the executive committee has to say. I mean, it seemed like the consensus was land will be harder to come by. in the future. So if we ever needed it, but also if we sell it, do we want, I mean, is there a way to somehow it benefit the residents of the county in some way, maybe economic development or something rather than just selling it off? So, but yeah, I would be very interested in an inventory of all the land facilities is actually like over, because we haven't seen that on the committee, so it would
So
be interesting.
I would, with your permission, invite Rachel Wells to come up and show us a tool that has been developed that would, maybe inventory is a strong word, but it would allow you to see what county properties there are. So, Rachel?
Come on up.
While we're waiting for her, I'll offer my input. I'm kind of like Supervisor Prochnow in that it kind of really depends on what the land is, as far as, you know, whether it makes sense to sell. I mean, I go back to a sale that I really disagreed with, which was selling our adjacent land to Prevea to build their clinic. And then the county was also on the hook then to build the frontage road, which wiped out what the county made on that land. And, you know, obviously at the time, we didn't know that they were gonna close up shop, and here we have that parcel could have remained part of the county. Because one of the things is when we sell county land, it's gone. We're not getting it back. If we want it back, we'd have to pay a lot more. And really selling that particular parcel really didn't make as much sense to me, especially because it was attached to this campus, and now it's gone. In the case of the islands down there, having spent part of my high school growing up in Rock Falls and swimming across the river to the islands, those have like a different sort of use. I could see where it could be something where it goes to like land conservation or something like that, where it could be maintained and still be accessible, but maybe then the county's off the hook for, you know, maintenance and that type of thing, unless we're actually making buku dollars on timber harvesting there. I probably don't think so. I remember that either part of one of those islands sold, I want to say 10 years ago or so, because I told a guy about it, that it was for sale, and he bought it. It was like 66 acres he bought, I think, for $50,000. So, because you can't get to it. There's no bridge. You have to boat there if you want to get there. That's part of the reason why those islands are abandoned, because the bridge is washed out in the early part of the 20th century. So they abandoned the ferries and the bridges and all of that stuff. So I think that if we're going to be selling land, we have to look at like the future of the county, what that land could potentially be used for. And in the case of the transfer station, if it's like you got somebody that's ready to buy it and maybe there's a provision for them to clean it up, have at it, have at it. But some of the land like that, where it could be something where it could be, you know, preserved or something like that, it makes sense either for the county to hold on to it, or to find something like land conservation or a trust to take it over. My 2 cents.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else?
I think Rachel's ready.
Yeah, so this is an application that we developed to display lands that are held in title by Dunn County. This is all publicly available on the Dunn County GIS site as well, but it's just more of a trimmed down version. And you'll find as you kind of cruise around on the map that some of these lands are held in title in different ways. Some of them are just Dunn County, some are Dunn County Highway Department. So that kind of adds to the complexity of pulling all of our actual county lands into this application. But this is an overall view of the county. There's approximately 760 properties and counting because the county does on occasion acquire right-of-way in what's called fee. So there were several conveyances that came through this year yet that actually aren't in here, but they're right-of-way. So they all are categorized roughly into what they are used for on the left-hand side in the layer list. ROW is for right-of-way. County general is when it's just lands that we have. We're not quite sure why we have acquired them, to put it bluntly. Most that are used for parks, some that are taken in in-rem foreclosure processes, highway operations like highway shops, salt shed, things like that. And then we have some outlots, the neighbors, unknown probably could be combined with county general. And then LCD would be that land conservation as well. So this application you can use to just cruise around the map, but there's also a filter icon where you can just filter down to see a list of all of the in-rem properties. And at the bottom, it shows you a table of those properties. And you can zoom to each of them. And so some of them you can maybe kind of glean why they went in REM. Sometimes people divide their land using a roadway and then just decide it's not really worth for them to do that, or something happens, for whatever reason they get taken. So you can use that filter here. You can also filter by any number of reasons. So if you just want to filter for those unknown ones, you can. It'll filter your list at the very bottom. And then we do have an acreage filter as well. So say you're thinking about things from which could be developed, you want to have some substantial amount of acreage there. There is a filter here as well. So sometimes the thing that you'll want to be mindful of when looking at this is right-of-way parcels can sometimes be kind of large. So you can always sort these columns by their use to help kind of just focus on those that you're interested in. And then it just gives you a little bit of history here, like the parcel identification number, if you want to go and look that in further detail to see maybe when we acquired it or how it was acquired. So all of that is on here. It's just a hope for it to be more of a tool. You can also search by place. You can search by an address or any of these property names. So you could filter by that as well. And we can go through and bookmark areas too if you're, specifically interested in one. It doesn't require a login at this point to look at it, but you can bookmark this, and as long as you don't clear the cache on your internet browser, it will remember your bookmark. And if you aren't a super fan of the background, because I know it's kind of hard, there is these little 4 squares here. You can change whatever your background is that you'd like to see to maybe make it a little bit easier for those areas to stand out. So.
Rachel, will you back out to the map, the whole map? And I saw that you were down by the river earlier. And there's this little corner of property down along the river, southwest of there. It's a little tiny.
This guy?
Yeah. So this has just intrigued me because I'm like, I wonder how we got this. But you can see if you're popping around and you scroll in on the map, you can see how you can see the properties. And then if you hover over them or click, you can see then that this is 28.5 acres right there on the corner of the river.
Down in the DNR land?
I think it is adjacent to those DNR lands. Right in here, this is the Dunnville Wildlife Area. Yeah.
So when I first opened it, I asked Rachel to show you because when I first opened it and you just have the whole big Dunn County sitting there and I'm like, oh, there's nothing on this map. But it's when you scroll in that you can see and you can sort of move around the county and see where the various properties are, or you can filter them.
Supervisor Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rachel, I understand that these parcels have a variety of different purposes, but can you give us some kind of idea of what we're talking about in terms of total acreage?
I don't have the total acreage. It's a good question. I can definitely get it to you pretty quickly by summarizing this acreage column. But I don't have that tool in here, but I can definitely get that for you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Supervisor Kinnear.
Yeah, thank you. Rachel, is this off of the regular GIS map? So if I went to that, I would get to this?
No, this is a completely separate web application, just kind of dedicated for the purposes of this discussion. And if the purpose needs to evolve too, we can take your feedback and make adjustments. But no, it is not connected. We could create a link, maybe for the ease of getting out to the GIS site quicker from here. Perhaps some hyperlinks if that's something that's desired, but it is completely separate from it. Right.
So our intention was, we've been working on just the permissions to it, but our intention was to get it out to all of you. It is public. It's
Mhm.
just that you have to kind of go to look for it, but we're going to give you kind of a shortcut of a better way,
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank
easier
you.
way to get here.
So we'll get it.
Yep, yeah, get a link. Yep.
Yeah, because I think
It's cool.
you have more, Rachel, or?
No, that's it. I think we'll just share the link with you, and then if there's any feedback on things that you would like, that you feel like would make it better, like, we're here for that. So,
Awesome. Thank
yeah.
you.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I mean, it would be difficult to craft a pure general land use, land sale, but I think it's worth looking at the different kinds. In REM stuff, we usually try to turn around pretty quickly.
Usually, yes.
Usually,
Uh, Some of the NREM properties aren't really very valuable. It might be like 0.175 acres that used to be on the inside of a curve, and the county came through in 1964 and smoothed it out a little. So now it's on the outside of the curve, and you can't get in there even with a 1970 tractor and plow. You can't get in there and do anything with it, so they just let it go.
Okay.
And over the years, we've had many occasions of having what I believe is probably a gravel pit that the county highway department may have used for a county highway that's no longer located adjacent to the property, because it got moved.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of interesting little nuggets of land out there that, when we discover them, we try to get them conveyed to an adjacent landowner so they can get it on the tax, so it's back
Get
on the
the
tax roll.
rolls, yeah. And I know that we're not going to want to let go really of any of the right of way. So that's probably not a huge part of this discussion, but I thought it was worth, since the discussion had started, I wanted all of the people in this room to at least be aware of it. Supervisor Calabrese.
Did Supervisor Bauer have something specific in mind, or was he just looking at how to raise some more revenue?
His contention, I believe, is that the county has no good reason to own those couple of islands, and that they would be, if those could be sold, they would raise some revenue towards the new highway shop. I am somewhat dubious of the proposition, but part of the job is making sure that we actually have the discussion.
Just for a point, I mean, if you go to Chippewa owns a lot of land compared to Dunn County, or Barron County owns a lot of land compared to Dunn County. I mean, we don't own as much as other counties do. So it's not like we own all this land and no other county owns land or something, just to put that out there.
Definitely. And go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was just going to say, Rachel and Andrew worked together to look at those numbers the other day, and roughly 85% of the property in Dunn County is not public. About 5% of it is county and other place owned, and then about 10% of it is in managed forest land.
Hmm.
Did I get that right?
Yeah, and I think, there's a benefit to publicly owned lands and publicly accessible lands in and of itself, there's a benefit to conservation. I strongly agree with Supervisor Zahn's point that once you've sold it, the decision has been made. But again, it's mostly a worthwhile discussion. And I think probably leaving it farmed out to the various committees who are attached to properties is the way to go, but
Thank you,
Supervisor Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And maybe this is a question for Anne. Is there, about going forward here, is there some urgency about the transfer station?
Chris? Or
I,
Ann?
I believe someone approached the county, so, they were looking for some kind of answer. But I would also appreciate, because I think it might be not as transparent if we would just sell things like off the market. Like, so it's just kind of one person approaches us and we just decide to sell it. But I don't know if that's the county's, take on it or how we want to handle things.
That seems a very reasonable concern.
So in the staff report that I did for you, it kind of lays a little bit of background as to the why, but we did have someone who approached us about purchasing the transfer station, not for transfer station purposes. However, there have also been, since before the close of the transfer station, there has been interest in other entities who are interested in leasing or purchasing it for transfer station purposes. And Nick and his staff are working on some of that. We've also, Scott Nabafeld has had some conversations with the DNR. I think we're kind of forging a path forward with that, but I think before the facilities committee went very far with that, we wanted to have this conversation. And then I did lay out in the staff report the pros and the cons, both of selling property off market, as well as just keeping or selling public property.
Yeah, I think there's one nice thing about, Randy, go ahead.
Just with the transfer station, I mean, vacant land's not a big deal. I mean, it doesn't cost us. The transfer station's got buildings there, it's got a scale there. There's things to maintain there. I mean, and we have some value there. I mean, we also have 20 acres right next to there if we ever want to build something. We have 20 acres that we can start from scratch, is what was the plan originally.
Mhm.
I mean, the transfer station doesn't work good for storage for the highway or anything else. It just sits there deteriorating and we're losing money. If it's on the tax roll, we're getting some kind of tax revenue out of it. It just doesn't make sense. If we have no use of it in the next 5 years, why aren't we at least looking into selling it versus keeping it when we have 20 acres right next to it? If we want to build something, we have 20 acres that we could do something with it. So
So there are two
wanted-
pigeons. There's two pigeons and some rats who live in there. So don't be saying it has no purpose.
Supervisor Vogel.
I think that wasn't the offer was for the 20 acres plus the transfer station.
Yes, they would be interested in that, but they are primarily interested in the transfer station at this point in time because of the buildings.
And I know there was some discussion, Stout was interested in possibly leasing it.
There's
at one point.
multiple entities that are interested, yeah.
Yeah, and again, that's one of those places where selling public lands versus leasing is another part of the discussion.
So when in preparation for facilities and that they'll get sort of the full report, but I went back to do, and several of you were a part of that, but did a deep dive through the whole solid waste and recycling history piece. And so some of the conclusion of that was that where the building currently sits, we should have a retaining pond and some different drainage, and there's not space for that to happen. So the likelihood of someone else being able to get their certification to reopen that as a transfer station might be impaired. I mean, we don't know that, but might be impaired by the fact that it's not really structurally set in the right spot in order for that to happen. So there are some problems with it potentially as a transfer station, but that's part of what we're trying to ferret out.
Good to know. Anyone else have anything they want to add? All right, I think that covers most of the discussion. I would suggest that if Supervisor Bauer wants to continue, he can have a chat with Tom and PRND, and you can decide whether you want to take that up or just have a discussion about it or anything, and we will try and get you more information. All right. So closing that item, 6A, 6B, resolution 2023 carry forwards and 2024 budget adjustments. This is one we need to vote on, correct? So I would need a motion and a second. Supervisor Morehouse, Supervisor Headland. You've all seen a million of these. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Review of reports, resolutions, and ordinances coming to the county board from the standing committees. Highway resolution for Work Zone Awareness Week in April. Randy, do you want to talk about that at all, or is it painfully obvious and we don't need to have that discussion?
Yeah, he didn't give me any stats or anything today, so I don't have a lot to give him, but, yeah, it's every year we do the safety awareness for, highway workers and stuff, and that's the week we have, so.
Okay.
And there will be some stuff coming out on that, flyer or whatever, so get posted, so.
All right. Since this is just review of reports, Health and Human Services, 2024 Health Department budget adjustment. You wanna, it's just the usual?
It's the usual. Yeah.
All right. I believe that takes us, so reports from standing committees, just as an FYI, our next exec meeting will be the meeting before the organizational meeting, and we are inviting new supervisors to come and listen to the exec committee. So it would probably behoove you to be a little bit prepared for reports from the standing committees. Brief but informative would be a suggestion, so that well, and of course, if nobody shows up, we can just do it the way we always do it, but I thought it would be useful. Well, often we are brief and informative, but occasionally it's, yeah, we did the usual thing or we didn't meet. So just a thing to put in the back of your heads that we may have some shiny new excited faces here to listen to the next round of reports for standing committees. And with that said, oh, Jim, you look very excited. Supervisor Zongs.
Well, and I'm going to defer to Supervisor Vogel because she actually chaired the CRNT committee meeting yesterday in my stead. So Supervisor Vogel, take it away.
All right, I took some notes. So there was a hiring process which was finished for a 0.4 FTE for a 4H position for 2 days a week that was hired. And then the community development position that's open should be closing soon, and the final interviews will be March 26th. And Kristen said that anyone who wants to be part of that final interview process should let her know. Then we had the 4H report from Zach, which was very informative. And the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation position, or the Greater Dunn County Economic Development Coordinator position is working its way towards getting posted. So we'll have a combined position. And then great news that we were awarded 4 out of 5 broadband grants.
Oh, awesome.
So, and that's before the whole BEAD process. So, I believe my note says Town of Lucas, Town of Grant, the Village of Knapp, and part of Colfax. So it was good news.
Excellent. Well, and since your microphone is on, you wanted to go ahead and jump right on into facilities?
Sure. So the facilities committee met on February 28th at 6 p.m. And as we were discussing, we had a proposal to purchase the transfer station and the 20 acres. We had a discussion about whether the property is contaminated or not. It might not be. The building on the property is 30 years old, and Scott had mentioned that it would be like $225,000 to repair the building. So we'd be interested in like an appraisal of the property, what it's worth, and like to test to see if it is contaminated or not. But yeah, we were waiting for this discussion to find out. Yeah, what should we be looking for, or how should we proceed? But the Fair Board has their theme, which is Christmas in July. And they do have sponsor opportunities. So if anyone on the board is interested, the music has been scheduled. And Deb also mentioned there's a potential bill that's coming because carnivals are having a harder time getting employees. And so it's some kind of CARE Act, which frees up visas for foreign workers to come and work for the carnivals for the summer. And so she said if we wanted to support that, that would be very helpful, because otherwise some of those carnival rides are hard to come by. And then Scott said the operations have been moving offices and repairing drywall. They've done an electrical upgrade in DHS. And they're looking into the transfer switches at Judicial Center for their generators and HVAC. And then they've been working on the walking bike path. And we also approved the racing schedule for the year. So,
Is the agenda.
yep. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Vogel. Supervisor Steen.
Yes, I don't know if it'd be appropriate, but I think they should be instructed to go ahead and find out if we have any remedial stuff to do, and get a assessment of what it's worth, so that in case so it would be ready to sell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think probably we don't have an agenda item appropriate to that. So we had a discussion, not a vote. But I would say certainly if you would like to pursue that, you are the committee appropriately authorized to do so, and should feel free, since we, did not come to any huge and earth-shattering conclusions about selling public lands. Does that suit your needs, Supervisor Steen?
Yes.
All righty. Supervisor Quinn.
Thank you. Planning, Resource and Development Committee. Just before I just add on to what Ann said from yesterday's CRNT meeting, which I thought was really interesting. It was reported that there were actually, I think he said 87 requests for broadband grants in this cycle, and they awarded 30 of them. And so for us to get 4 out of 30 out of 87, with all the ones they've already gotten, speaks to, the good work that the towns have done and that the county's done in partnership with them. So in PR&D, we've been dealing with 2 major issues. One is the staff has been preparing to initiate the rewrite of the comprehensive land use plan, which will be a year-long at least effort. And they come up with a plan for how they want to do that, how they want to do a lot of public outreach on that. So we've been talking about that. They're going to be asking for a carryover of funding from last year to support some resource from regional planning to help with data collection and assessment and meeting facilitation, that sort of thing. So that's ongoing. The biggest thing on our plate has been the last 6 to 8 months of discussion about an ordinance that would allow the development of accessory dwelling units in the county. This is the county, not the city. And so we have been working on that ordinance just about every 2 weeks for the last 6 months at least, or maybe the last 2 months at that pace. But the ordinance is finally ready for public hearing. That'll happen next Wednesday. It's been an interesting process. The committee has been made every effort to make the discussion inside of the committee meeting open to citizens. And I bet you we've had, I don't know, as many as 10 people, but often at least 5 or 6 people every meeting who've asked to come up and share their thoughts, tell us where we're wrong, what we've overlooked. And that really helps sort of set the stage for making sure that the ordinance is ready for the public hearing. Even so, I imagine we will have a fair number of people at the public hearing. And the committee is going to have to listen carefully to the comments. But if appropriate, we will make a decision on that. And that basically, this will allow homeowners to, if they are, for example, in a residential 1 zoning area, to have the ability to build with a adjacent ADU, accessory dwelling unit, so they could house a family member, or they could themselves live there and have their kids live in their house, or a very small separated accessory dwelling unit on their property. Those all have to be owned by the lot owner. And in general ag and in R2, they would have the ability to build a somewhat larger, up to 1,500 square foot unit, either attached to the dwelling or separate from the dwelling, subject to variances and septic systems and building codes and all that sort of thing. So what it does really is it creates an opportunity for flexibility for people to add housing without having to divide their lots and sell off a chunk of land. And we think in the committee that it will help in a very modest way alleviate some of the pressure that came out of the housing study on the home ownership and housing needs in the county. And anybody, Mike and Diana are in the committee. Do you have any comments about it?
Only that it's 1,200 square feet. And
Right.
a junior accessory dwelling unit in R1, which is like 600 square feet.
650, yeah. So I'm sorry, we did reduce it down for 1,500. Right?
So sorry for the correction.
No, it's all right. Thank you for the correction. That's about it, I think, for our committee.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Quinn. Supervisor Headland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Committee on Administration met last month, February 22nd, here in this room. We had, as usual, good attendance, along with the great written reports that always come forward from our staff that report to us, that keep us updated. We get to follow their budgets and the progress of them throughout the year. And it's enlightening to just know that we're able to oversee in writing, actually, everything that we're responsible for. Along with that, we approved the vouchers and had a good overlook of those. And then, of course, carry forwards, that long list that you saw. And for anyone who is watching from the public who maybe don't understand why we have such a thing, carry forward is leftover funds from a previous budget. County board is, by statute, can only present a balanced budget from year to year. And so unspent funds that we wish to use to carry forward their intent, then must go through a resolution and be approved by the board again, and part of the ongoing budget process. So that's always happens this time of year, but it's an important thing that does. Money can't be shoved aside or used for purposes not intended. Along with that, we had a discussion on the county treasurer vacancy that came about, and decided to move forward with a plan to interview people for the position, anyone interested, and to, if possible, hire a person to fill out the term. And then, of course, that election term will be coming up. And we wanted to use a sense of urgency in doing that, because if somebody is interested and then hopes to seek the election, those papers need to be taken out in April. And so we have to go forward with that process. I'm glad to say that we are having a meeting on Friday morning. And we're going to be talking with a few of us and looking over the pool of candidates, and hopefully coming up with a agreeable group to pass on for interviews, and that the committee can go through the interview process and hopefully find us another good treasurer. That's in my report as far as what we did at the meeting. Next meeting coming up here, March 28th, we'll be here again in this room at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Headland, both for the report and for the effort to educate those who might be tuning in. That was very nicely done. Supervisor Prochnow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Highway and Transit met this morning. Update on transit. Well, electric bus. I would say at least a year from now. But we actually got a comment or something back from the actual company. So I would say at least a year, if not longer. Which, like I said, 6 months ago, I told you 3 months. So anyway, but we did hear back.
Oh, yeah, that one is, I was chair of transit when the grant went out and chair of highway when it came back, and
I think that was 20.
and now I'm here.
So anyway, it's gonna be at least a year before they get anything close to that. Anyway, highway, obviously been a real mild winter. What the highway's been doing is brushing, filling potholes, basic. The roads seems like they came through fairly well through the winter. So far they just did a fuel analyst, and that we saved $86,000 in fuel so far this winter. So obviously that's a nice savings too. As far as projects going, sounds like the south part of Highway B is going to probably start around April 1st. We'll have more of a deadline. We'll have a release on that fairly soon. But April 1st sounds like we might be starting on road construction on there. Other projects, just getting everything ready to go. Obviously the bike path, you can see that we're got some work done on that. Looks like it'll be another month or two. We're working with the city, getting everything figured out and ready to go on that. So that's about it for highway and transit. So thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Prochnow. Supervisor Kinnear.
Thank you. I'm going to have a little different report for the neighbors tonight. I'm going to save my detailed one for next time at your suggestion there. But it's not often that Dunn County can get on the front page of the Eau Claire Leader in a good way. Front page for the CNA nursing training program that's located out there now. And I got to compliment Carmen on working for that it's been at least 4 years.
Yes, thank you.
Maybe more. Yeah. And we even made the opinion column too, saying we're doing a good job in the Eau Claire with that idea. So I did, yeah. Yes, so I just wanted to say something good with that. And also the new bus is sitting out front and waiting for the license plates. So.
The naming contest.
And naming contest. So all's really good. I think they're doing a great job out there, and it's wonderful to see something come to fruition after so much work. Sometimes in government, things just seem to take so long, but they can happen. So I appreciate it. And one other comment about where we get our news. I know Supervisor Quinn had seen this in the paper, but unless you get the Eau Claire paper, you don't see this. Unless you get the Colfax paper, you don't see some things. And I'm gonna give a plug. I think it's kind of our duty to see those things regularly because we should be getting the news. And we're on both sides. We're trying to get it out. Chris is doing a great job with that, but it's really difficult. So things are going good. We're going to meet at the end of the month again on Thursday, right before Health and Human Services in the morning, and look for more good stuff.
Thank you, Supervisor Kinnear. Supervisor Calabrese.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Judiciary and Law Committee met on February 26th. And next month, I will detail a little more about all the wonderful reports we get every month from the departments, and who delivers those. But we learned a little bit about the morgue or lack thereof in Dunn County from the medical examiner, and there's a question about whether the closure of Sacred Heart would impact where Dunn County stores bodies because they stored some there. And we learned from Marcy Rojas that several funeral homes in Dunn County work with the department to house bodies, some that aren't claimed yet. And so just interesting to learn about that relationship that we have with local funeral homes. The clerk of courts reported that 90 individuals from the local homeschool group toured the judicial facility, along with the sheriff and the clerk of courts. And we passed through a carry forward budget adjustment from the sheriff's office and adjourned that meeting. And then we realized that we neglected to put on the agenda the carry forward for emergency management. So the Judiciary and Law Committee had a special meeting on March 8th on Zoom for about 15 minutes, and we passed that carry forward ahead, which was in the package of all the ones that we did here today. And next meeting is right here on March 25th at 4:30.
Thank you, Supervisor Calabrese. Supervisor Steen, I know we haven't had legislative and WCA is coming up, but think about having something to say about both of those next time around, or unless you have anything you want to add right now.
No, I don't.
All right. Supervisor Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What a surprise. The Health and Human Services Board last met on February 22nd. We always get absolutely fabulous reports from our three departments, and I don't know if I express gratitude for the hard, professional and wonderful work that they do often enough, but it's fabulous. We did also learn several very important things about who the winners of the Human Services Department chili cook-off were. Apparently they have really good chili. And then we learned something about speed stacking, which is some sort of thing that was explained to me several times. It's about cops and whatever. Anyway, they're having a contest. Has it already been? I see. Well, if you're interested in speed stacking, I'm sure that Ms. Winter would be happy to invite you. We did spend a lot of time talking, and not surprisingly, about the implications of the sort of spiraling implications of the HHS Prevea closing. Our Birth to 3 program has had occupational and physical therapists for the children. That no longer exists. And, obviously the department and HR and the county manager are looking at some of the staffing implications of some of this. There are essentially no inpatient crisis or mental health beds in the region. Gunderson has a few beds, but they don't necessarily take people from out of county. So it's a significant loss of care, and people in crisis are going to have to be transported across the state at approximately $1,000 a trip, a one-way trip. So it's a two-way trip anyway. The Ellie Phillips Libertas Center has closed. There are no detox beds in the region, nothing. And there is no inpatient substance abuse treatment. So, people with psychiatric care and mental health care issues who have been receiving treatment are, hopefully they can be directed to additional treatment should such a thing actually exist. And I think that we should all be prepared for understanding that there are going to be a lot more emergency room visits. There are going to be more kind of crisis calls, emergency detentions in the future, because this is, the implications of this, I think, are in lots of ways just really staggering. In terms of business, we approved budget adjustments, and our next meeting is Thursday, the 28th, right after admin.
Thank you, Supervisor Morehouse. That's all the reports to the standing committees, Supervisor Steen, and then Nick.
I rethought what I said. On the legislative committee will be our next meeting, and what we're going to address is the Medicaid reimbursement. We're going to bring that as part of our legislative ask of the legislators, and I think I'm hopeful, cautiously hopeful, that there's a little change of tune down in the legislature regarding that, because the impact of HHS closing and St. Joe's closing and all of the nursing homes that have closed, the Medicaid money would, I think, help. To what degree, I don't know. And then also to follow up on Supervisor Kinnear's thought on the paper, I will be bringing a motion or a thought to the whole county board that we change our official paper from the Dunn County News to the Colfax Messenger. They do a great job of covering the county news, the village news, and the township news. And and while I might disagree with the opinions that their editor has, I give them 100% credit for having a newspaper and covering all of the municipality's business, because how else will the people know? So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Welcome, Supervisor Steen.
I apologize for the delay. You moved on so quickly. The budget adjustment resolution, is it from Health and Human Services Board? So that's approved in concept, but it is a resolution of the executive committee. And so I think you need to.
My
vote on it.
apologies. Yes.
That's
All right. Stepping back to 7B, Health and Human Services 2024 Health Department Budget Adjustment. I would need a Supervisor Steen, Supervisor Morehouse. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have dotted our i's and crossed our t's. Thank you very much. So our next meeting date will be April 10th, 2024 at 3:30. Anyone else have anything that desperately needs to be on here that's like within the scope of our agenda?
Well, this is not necessarily in the scope of our agenda, thank you. But I neglected to say that Veterans Services is having a resource fair and seminar on Saturday, April 27th. There'll be presentations on trauma and the PACT Act and all of the increased veterans benefits and a bunch of resources. So if you've got constituents that should be informed of that, please do so. It's at the Alliance Church.
And the Veteran Service Office is going to be setting up some quick sessions for veterans to get a little bit of a quick scoop on benefits they may be entitled to, and try to steer them towards the correct agency to help them do that. Good. So.
Excellent. That's certainly within the scope of the Health and Human Services portion of the reports of standing committees, I think.
It's also a good announcement.
Yes. All right. With that, we are adjourned. About 5 minutes.